Hello, my name is Dr. Christopher Bradley. This is Developmental Psychology. What I'm going to do in this video is kind of go over the syllabus. It would be like a syllabus day if we were in an in-person class. So I'll have a video where we kind of go over what we'll do throughout the semester. We'll talk a little bit about some of the important assignments that we'll do and some of the assignments that we'll cover more in depth later on. Hopefully you are in the class because you would like to learn some cool stuff about developmental psychology. If you're not, if you're just here for a grade, the good news is that this course is basically, if you can show up and you can follow simple instructions, you should be able to get a good grade. So if you're just here for an A, you should be able to do that if you can kind of pay attention. For this semester, the class is online. So whenever you hear something like showing up, or you read that, or attending, if you see that in the videos or in the syllabus, it's not literally showing up to class. It's showing up and engaging, with your classmates, engaging with the material, basically being mentally present, not necessarily physically present. All right, so what is this course? Developmental psychology. It gives you insight into how you became the person that you are and the people that you know, how they became the people that they are. It gives you insight. Developmental psychology is lifelong and multifaceted. So it's not just about kids. Older people are developing too. And multifaceted. So you have the biology, you have the environment, you have the interaction between those two. You have your culture, you have the time period that you exist in, you have your choices that you make. And so all of these things combine together to create the product of you. Also in the class, we will talk about some theories and we'll talk about research in developmental psychology. So Erickson, for example, somebody will talk about Piaget, we'll talk about him quite a bit. Something else we'll do in the class is possibly learn how to influence development, meaning if you're going to have kids someday, you might learn some things in this class that you can use to help raise them. Probably the most important thing to me anyways in the class is that you learn something that interests you. Hopefully you find something you're like, wow, I didn't know that and I find that really interesting and I'm going to carry that away from the course with me. Things that you can take beyond the course. An example in the later chapter for me is I talk about Frankl in a book that he wrote called Man's Search for Meaning. So I really like existential psychology. And so that sort of stuff is right up my alley. And so when I read that, I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. And I'm going to remember that for quite a while. So hopefully you can find something in this course that piques your interest like that piques mine. As a couple of examples to get us started with, you might find these interesting. Posted these, double posted in the modules so that you can look at them. The term epigenetics, you might think about that. If I heard of the term epigenetics, do I know what that is? When I asked this physically in the class, a lot of people have never even heard of the term. Basically, your genes are fixed, but how they are expressed can change through the lifetime. It's basically like a volume knob. You can turn some genes up and you can turn some genes down. Not only is that going to affect you and your lifespan, but if you turn some gene up or turn something down, when you produce offspring, you are going to produce offspring that has those genes that are turned up or turned down. In this example here from this article, they looked at soldiers in the American Civil War that were in some of the most grueling prison camps. Their sons died younger than the sons of soldiers that were not in the worst prison camps. So one of the reasons that they think that this happened is that they passed on turned up versions of certain genes that caused early mortality for their kids. Now this is profound because what this means is that the things that you are doing and you are experiencing right now could be changing you at an epigenetic level, and you could be passing those changes on to kids that you have not even conceived yet. Another example, ApoE4. This is a gene. I think everybody should have their genes done, like with 23andMe, not necessarily for the ancestry, but to find out about your genes. See if you have a gene like ApoE4. With ApoE4, your chances of dementia drastically go up. There's also some research that suggests that saturated fat may influence that. So if you eat a lot of saturated fat during the lifespan and you have ApoE4, the chances of you getting dementia could drastically go up too. So if you knew that, you might, avoid eating saturated fat through the lifespan. But this research it's always evolving. So it might just not be saturated fat. It might be the combination of saturated fat and diets high in sugar. So if you know you have this gene and you have the combination of saturated fat and a lot of sugar, you might avoid those things. And so by knowing that and having that knowledge, you can influence your development and maybe avoid getting something like dementia. So yes, if you know that you have this gene, it might influence your choices so that you can live longer and happier. Another example that we'll talk about that a lot of people, this strikes them as interesting. What do you think the most popular vegetable is for children nowadays in America? Just think about that for a second. The most popular vegetable for children. The research has shown that it is French fries. So in this study, they consider potatoes a vegetable, and so they consider French fries to be technically a vegetable. And this is the most popular vegetable with kids, not carrots, not corns. They want to eat French fries more than anything. And so we have a health epidemic in this culture. And a lot of it has to do with weight, and this is one of the reasons why we start off kids feeding them French fries all the time. And we'll get into that throughout the course. What do you need for the course? You'll need to check the LMS regularly, so that's going to be D2L, maybe Canvas, Brightspace. Check it for one. I'll make a lot of announcements. Each week I'll make announcements. Like these are the things that I do. I'll probably create a video for that. I'll also post the Zoom links there. You might turn on your notifications on the announcement so that whenever I post an announcement, it sends you an email about it. You might do that because I do not send a lot of emails. I do make a lot of announcements. I am in contact that way, but I don't deal with email a whole lot. So you might turn on the notifications for the announcements. We'll check that for the Zoom links. Textbook. The title of that is posted in the syllabus. It's Santrock, and I think it's Essentials of Lifespan Development. He wrote a couple of different ones, but I think it's Essentials of Lifespan Development. I use version 5 quite a bit, but version 6 is the newest version. Go ahead. If you want to get version 6, go for it. I think you can get away with getting version 5. There's a few things that are a little bit different, but overall you'll probably be okay if you want to save yourself some money. I do think personally you should get a version of the book just so you can read it. And for some of you, it's something that you can take into your career because maybe you're getting a degree in psychology or physical therapy or something. There might be something in this book that could help you in the long term. But all that being said, there have been people that wrote in the past, several years ago, they wrote, I wish he had told us we didn't need the book. That's what they wrote on the evals for the course. The reason that they said that is because during the lectures, the video lectures, and the in-person lectures, I basically cover every single question that is going to be on the tests. So some people are like, well, I didn't even need the book. You don't technically need it to maybe get a good grade in the course, but you might need it for your own personal benefit. You'll also want to check the LMS for the modules. I'll post a bunch of articles in the modules, and you can take those, take them or leave them. It's just interesting things that have come up as I've taught this course throughout the years, and some of it's like really interesting stuff. Some of it, maybe you're like, I'm not very interested in that. Don't read it, but read the ones that you are interested in. Some of them you will have to look at, though, for some discussion questions that we'll have. All right, the points for the course. This slide lists all of them. I will post this Prezi on D2L on Canvas so that you can look at that. I'm going to briefly go through some of those. On the quizzes, there are 8 of them. They're 15 points each. Each week, you'll be in a group. For the in-person classes, what we did is we did these quizzes in groups in class to help build group cohesiveness because you're going to work with these people throughout the semester. So yes, you get to learn about your group members while taking these quizzes. But also, and this is really important, you actually learn the material better when you are interacting with other people. When you have to think about the questions that are on the quiz and you have to regurgitate them, you have to discuss them with other people. There's a learning process that's happening there that you don't get when you just read a question and push some button on the multiple choice. You both learn the material better. For example, like if one student asks a question because they don't know the answer, the other student gives them the answer, so that student has learned. But the student that has provided the answer is also learning too. They are to be able to recite that knowledge out loud to another person. That is true learning. The ability to give knowledge to another person, to be able to teach somebody. It actually helps you be a better learner because you ingrain that knowledge. So by doing the quizzes in groups together with other people, it actually helps everybody. There's 120 points total for this. Again, you'll need a device, computer. I think you could do it on a phone, but I'd probably just do it on a computer if it's during this semester. The quizzes are open book. It will help you learn about the test material. So the quizzes, what I do is I make them mostly definitional, kind of simple questions. And then for the tests, they are more applied knowledge. So if you know these definitions, you should be able to apply them. And if you can do that, you should do on the tests. But basically all the information that's on the quizzes has the potential to be on the tests. So they're a really good study. The quizzes are a really good study guide for the tests. Oh, yes. And also, when you're interacting with your group members, that is going to help you later on. Again, that's going to help build that cohesiveness because we have a group project at the end of the semester. And if we have good, cohesive groups, everything goes very smoothly for you and for me. And that's what we would all like to happen. All right, next are the tests. They are 200 points altogether. There's 4 of them. They're worth 50 points each. Multiple choice. Again, you'll need a computer, a device so that you can take those. If you do well in the quizzes, there should be a correlation there between your quiz grades and your test grades. On the assignment type, so some of them are individual, some of them are groups, like the quizzes are a group grade. The tests are an individual grade. And we'll talk, there's another one, the reflections are an individual thing. I've split the course up into about half group points and then half individual points, just to kind of spread the points out so that if people are like, oh, I'm not that good at working in a group, well, you do have all these projects that are individual so that you can step up there. One of the big components of the class are the discussions. There's several terms for how we do this. Active learning, flipped classroom. It is not a lecture-only class. The research does not support that being a viable way for long-term learning. Learning while interacting with other people. Sometimes it's more difficult, but it can be more effective. You actually have to think about what you're going to say on a topic. When you're asked a question, you have to respond verbally and like, these are my thoughts on that question. You actually have to think through it, and that is active learning. Actively doing something instead of just being passive, which is what the lecture is. Passive, you're basically just a receptacle for the information. The information is coming to you and you're not really thinking about it, you're not really processing it. But in the discussions, you're going to take that information and use it and process it, analyze it, and try to come up with your own ideas from it. That is, creative thinking. That's critical thinking. We'll talk more about those type of ideas throughout this course, actually. Okay, the discussions are worth 100 points. On the practice group projects and the final group projects, we'll go over those when they're closer to being due because they're a ways out right now. Finally, for the assignments part, reflections. It's a pretty easy assignment. It shows me that you've been paying attention. It's also an individual assignment. So, some people, again, they wanted more individual points, and so I created these reflections for it. In this, you can basically apply the knowledge that you've learned in the class to your life. And this is in the assignment description. It says something, find 3 items from chapters 1 through 4 or the supplemental articles I'll post that you found interesting. Tell me what those things are, and then describe those 3 things. Describe how they can apply to your life. Like if I told you about the ApoE4 and you went and had your genes done, you saw you had that, that's definitely something that would apply to your life. Okay, on the virtual office and questions, one of the pages in the syllabus goes in depth into this one. 1, for general class questions, questions about the class, how to do an assignment, when something's due, you're going to post those in it's called the virtual office. It's basically part of the discussion boards. Yes, you can go post them in the virtual office. I do not do a lot of emails, so this virtual office is definitely going to be the quickest way to get an answer from me outside of class time. On most school days, I check that virtual office several times. I don't check my email several times a day. I do check the virtual office though, so that's definitely the quickest way to get your questions answered. That being said, I also take the weekends off. I try to stay away from screens. I try to hang out with my son. So if you send a question late Friday night, you might not get a response till the next school day. Also, on this page in the syllabus that goes over this virtual office, for some classes I have TAs, and so you might look through there because there may be a specific TA for whatever issue you have, like test accommodations. There's a TA for that in some courses. Some courses not. Some courses I take care of it. All that being said, if you have some kind of a personal issue, like you have some kind of anxiety about some type of an assignment, and you need for me to give you some kind of advice, then that would be a reason to send me an email instead of posting it in the virtual office. Also, for the accommodations, test accommodations, please don't post that in the virtual office. You would definitely want to post that either to the TA or to me, depending on the class. And you can read all about that. There's an entire page that goes all through these things in the syllabus. The virtual system, virtual office system, it does seem a little strange at first, but it does work really well for everyone. I was reading the evals from last semester, and there were students that were like, wow, he was really on the ball. He answered my questions like that. That's using the virtual office because I'm already there. When I'm in class, I have that opened up, so I can answer them like that. I don't have my email opened up. So definitely do take advantage of that virtual office, and please ask any questions for things that you're not sure about, because there's other students that they're not going to know the answers to questions too, but maybe they're afraid to ask the questions. So if you go in there and ask those questions in the virtual office, I can answer it, and then everybody has the same information. Right now, what you want to do is maybe get the textbook, depending on how you feel about it, version 5, version 6, however you feel about it. Maybe you don't want to write it, maybe you don't want to buy one. You could maybe rent one. You do want to look over the syllabus, and then also there is a quiz. After you've read through the syllabus, after you've watched this video, you have to take that quiz to move on to the week 2 information. So do look over the syllabus. Do take that. It's a very short quiz that just asks you some questions about the virtual office, really. Look over the schedule so you see kind of how things are going to work. You might start looking over chapters 1 and 2. I'll open that up. You might look over the articles. You might look over the discussion questions for D1. So right now, just a lot of looking over things to get prepared for the upcoming classes. I think that's it for today. I think that a lot of you will enjoy the class. Most students, they find something that they really liked, and it's something that they can really take away later in their lives. So that's it for today. Thank you for listening.